I'm Major Emma Carter, 34, an Air Force officer who worked my way up from enlisted ranks to commanding my own flight. For years, I did everything for my family, showed up, supported, proved myself, only to be mocked for what they called my little military phase. But the day they walked into the museum and saw my name engraved on the Wall of Heroes, everything changed. Have you ever been underestimated by the people you love most, only to finally prove them wrong without saying a word? If so, tell me your story in the comments. You're not alone. Before I get into what happened, let me know where you're tuning in from. And if you've ever had to stand your ground after being dismissed or doubted, hit that like button and subscribe for more true stories about boundaries, pride, and quiet redemption. What happened next might surprise you. I grew up in a house where appearances mattered more than anything else. My father, Anthony Carter, was a corporate manager who wore expensive suits and spoke in the kind of confident tone that made people assume he knew what he was talking about. He valued control over meetings, over budgets, over how our family looked to the neighbors. My brother Ryan inherited that same easy charm, the kind that let him glide through life without ever really committing to anything. And then there was me. I was the reliable one. The helper. When Dad needed someone to pick up dry cleaning on the way home, I did it. When Ryan's car broke down at 2 in the morning, I was the one who drove out to get him. When Mom needed help organizing her charity events, I showed up early and stayed late. I didn't mind, really. I thought that's what families did, you showed up for each other. At 22, I made a decision that changed everything. I enlisted in the Air Force. I'd been working a forgettable office job, watching my life flatten into something predictable and small. One afternoon, I drove past a recruiting office and found myself pulling into the parking lot. The recruiter, a calm woman with sharp eyes, asked me what I was looking for. I didn't have a good answer then. I just knew I wanted something more than what I had. When I told my family at dinner that night, the reaction wasn't what I'd hoped for. The military? Dad said, setting down his fork. Emma, that's a bit dramatic, don't you think? I think it's cool, Mom said quietly, but she looked uncertain. Ryan laughed. Our little soldier. This should be interesting. I tried to explain about the structure, the purpose, the chance to serve something bigger than myself. But Dad just shook his head. You're young. Everyone goes through phases. You'll get it out of your system. That word. Phase. Like my decision was something I'd outgrow, like a bad haircut or a questionable boyfriend. I shipped out to basic training 6 weeks later. Those 8 weeks stripped me down and rebuilt me. I learned to move with precision, to follow orders without hesitation, to push past exhaustion when every part of me wanted to quit. I learned that discipline wasn't about control, it was about trust. Trust in your training, your team, yourself. When I came home on leave after tech school, wearing my uniform for the first time, I thought maybe they'd see me differently. Maybe they'd understand. Ryan opened the door. Wow, the costume looks official. At dinner, Dad asked polite questions about boot camp, but I could see his attention drifting. When I mentioned my assignment to Lackland Air Force Base, he nodded absently. That's in Texas, right? Hot down there. I tried to share what it meant to earn my first stripe, to be called Airman Carter, to feel like I was part of something that mattered. But every time I brought up the Air Force, someone changed the subject. Mom asked about whether I'd met anyone. Ryan made jokes about drill sergeants. Dad talked about a new client he'd landed. I kept visiting when I could. I sent gifts, a coffee mug for Dad with the Air Force symbol, a nice scarf for Mom from the base exchange. I showed up for every family dinner when I was on leave. I thought if I just kept showing up, kept proving myself, they'd eventually get it. But the jokes never stopped. They were small at first, almost affectionate. Private Hero was Ryan's favorite. Dad liked to salute me ironically when I walked in the door. Mom would pat my shoulder and say, "We're proud of you, honey," but it felt automatic, like she was reading from a script. I made senior airman at 24. It meant more responsibility, more trust from my leadership, a small but significant bump in rank. I called home to share the news. "That's great, sweetheart," Mom said. "What does that mean exactly?" I tried to explain the rank structure, what it took to earn the promotion. She listened, but I could hear the television in the background. "Well, we're very proud," she said. "Your father wants to say hello." Dad's voice came through. Emma, your mother says congratulations are in order. I made senior airman, I said. It's a big step. I'm sure it is. Listen, I've got a conference call in 10 minutes, but good job, kiddo. Keep it up. The call lasted 3 minutes. At family gatherings, I became the subject of gentle mockery. At Thanksgiving, Ryan brought his new girlfriend, who asked about my service. Before I could answer, Ryan jumped in. Oh, Emma's very serious about her military career. Very disciplined. She probably irons her pajamas. Everyone laughed. I smiled, but something inside me tightened. When I made staff sergeant at 26, I earned the right to supervise other airmen. I was responsible for their training, their welfare, their readiness. It was the first time I truly felt like a leader, not just a follower. I drove home on leave, ready to share this achievement. Dad was grilling in the backyard. I told him about the promotion, about what it meant to be a non-commissioned officer now. So you're finally moving up in the world, he said, flipping a burger. How's the pay? It's not about the pay, I said. Everything's about the pay, Emma. That's how you know if you're doing well. Ryan wandered over with a beer. You still polishing boots every morning? That's part of the standards, I said. Sounds exhausting. I'm exhausted just thinking about it. I wanted to tell them about Airman Rodriguez, a young kid from Houston who'd been struggling with homesickness until I sat with him one night and helped him work through it. I wanted to tell them about the feeling of watching my team execute a flawless training exercise, moving like one organism. I wanted them to understand that what I did mattered, not because of the pay, but because of the people. But I didn't say any of that. I just nodded and smiled and helped my mother set the table. The imbalance grew wider. I kept reaching out, kept trying to bridge the gap. I'd call once a week, visit whenever I could get leave, remember birthdays and anniversaries. They responded with distracted affection, as if I were a distant relative they felt obligated to acknowledge. When I earned my commission as a second lieutenant at 26, after completing officer training school, it was the proudest moment of my life. I'd gone from enlisted to officer, earned the right to lead at a higher level. The ceremony was formal and meaningful. The oath I took felt like a covenant. I called home immediately after. An officer, Mom said. That sounds important. It is, I said. It means I've earned the trust to lead at a different level. So you finally got a promotion that matters, Dad said. Good for you. They all matter, I said quietly. Sure. But now you're actually in charge, right? That's what counts. I drove home that weekend to show them my new uniform, the single gold bar on my shoulder. Ryan was there with his latest girlfriend, a woman who worked in marketing. So you're like a manager now? She asked. In a way, I said. I lead a team. Emma's been climbing the ranks, Dad said, smiling. Our little officer. Ryan raised his beer. To Lieutenant Emma. Still playing soldier after all these years. The room laughed. Good-natured, casual. But the word playing hit differently this time. I stayed for dinner, made small talk, helped clean up. Then I drove back to base in silence, watching the city lights disappear behind me. The highway stretched empty ahead, and I realized something I'd been avoiding for years. They were never going to understand. And maybe that was okay. But it didn't stop it from hurting. The months after my commission were busy. I threw myself into work because work made sense. The Air Force operated on clear principles: competence, integrity, excellence. You did your job well, and you earned respect. Simple. My first assignment as a second lieutenant put me in charge of a logistics flight team at Ramstein Air Base in Germany. 15 airmen, all depending on me to lead them effectively. I'd wake at 0500 hours, review the day's mission requirements, and be at the office before most of the base had finished their first cup of coffee. I learned quickly that leading officers was different from being an enlisted supervisor. The decisions carried more weight. A mistake I made didn't just affect my own evaluation, it rippled through the entire team. But I also learned that good leadership was still just good leadership, regardless of rank. Listen to your people. Trust their expertise. Make decisions based on mission needs, not ego. Captain Alex Vega worked in the same squadron. He was 3 years older, an academy graduate with an easy confidence that came from knowing exactly who he was. We became friends over late-night shifts and shared frustrations about bureaucracy. "You're too hard on yourself," he told me one night over bad coffee in the break room. "You know that, right?" "I just want to do it right," I said. "Nobody does it perfectly." "You think I don't screw up?" "Last week I authorized the wrong transport manifest, and we had to completely redo the loading sequence. Cost us 4 hours." "What happened?" "I owned it, fixed it, moved on." "That's the job." I appreciated his honesty. Most people I knew back home would have blamed someone else or made excuses. Alex just acknowledged the mistake and improved. I called my parents less frequently during those months. Not out of spite, just logistics. The time difference made it difficult, and, honestly, I didn't have much to say that they'd understand. My world was flight manifests and operational readiness. Theirs was quarterly earnings and neighborhood gossip. We existed in parallel universes. When I did call, the conversations felt hollow. "How's Germany?" Mom would ask. "Cold, but beautiful. The base is incredible. Are you eating enough? You know how you get when you're stressed." "I'm fine, Mom. Your father wants to know if you're still planning to come home for Christmas." Christmas. Another family gathering where I'd be the odd one out, the one who chose something different. "I'll try," I said. "Depends on the mission schedule." "Ryan's bringing his fiancée. Did I tell you he's engaged?" I hadn't known. "That's great. Congratulations to him. They're thinking about a spring wedding. You'll be there, won't you?" "I'll do my best." After we hung up, I sat in my small quarters, looking at the pictures on my desk. Most of them were from the Air Force, my flight team, a ceremony where I received a commendation medal, Captain Vega and me after completing a particularly brutal exercise. Only one photo showed my family, taken years ago at a cousin's graduation. I looked different in that old photo. Younger, sure, but also smaller somehow. Like I was still waiting for permission to take up space. I made first lieutenant at 28, right on schedule. The promotion came with more responsibility. I was now executive officer for the logistics squadron, managing the daily operations while the commander handled strategic decisions. It meant longer hours, more complex problems, more chances to prove myself. Colonel Sarah Whitman, my squadron commander, called me into her office the week after my promotion. "How are you adjusting, Carter?" "Fine, ma'am. Still learning the scope, but I'm getting there. I've been watching your performance. You're good at this. Methodical, thorough. Your team respects you." "Thank you, ma'am." She leaned back in her chair. "Can I give you some advice?" "Of course." "Stop waiting for permission to be confident. You earned that bar on your shoulder. You earned the respect of your team. Own it." I nodded, but she must have seen the uncertainty in my face. "Let me guess," she said. "Someone in your life doesn't take what you do seriously." I hesitated. "My family doesn't really understand the military." "Do they try to?" That was the question, wasn't it? Did they try? "Not really," I said quietly. "Then stop expecting them to." I know that sounds harsh, but respect doesn't always come from where you want it to. Sometimes the people who matter most to you are the ones who understand you least. She tapped her desk. "Focus on the mission. Focus on your people. The rest will sort itself out." I left her office thinking about that conversation for days. Focus on the mission. It sounded simple, but it represented a fundamental shift in how I'd been living. For years, I'd been trying to prove something to my family, hoping they'd eventually see me the way I saw myself. What if I just stopped? What if I stopped calling every week? Stopped visiting on every leave? Stopped trying to translate my world into terms they'd appreciate? It felt like giving up. But it also felt like self-preservation. I made captain at 29. Oh, 3. The rank came with my own flight command, 35 airmen under my direct leadership. It was everything I'd worked toward, the culmination of 7 years of service. I didn't call my parents immediately. I waited 3 days, until after the ceremony, after I'd celebrated with my team, after the moment felt solidly mine. "Emma." Mom sounded pleased. "We haven't heard from you in weeks." "I've been busy. I got promoted. I'm a captain now." "Oh, that's wonderful. Let me get your father." Dad's voice came through. "Emma, your mother says you got another promotion. Captain. I'm commanding my own flight now." "Well, that's great. Really great." "You must be, what, almost 30. 29. Time flies. Your brother just made partner at his firm. Can you believe it? 28 years old and already a partner. That's great, I said. The words felt automatic. We should all get together soon. Celebrate both of you. Maybe Thanksgiving. Maybe. I'll have to check my schedule. The Air Force doesn't give you time off for Thanksgiving? It's complicated, Dad. Well, try to make it work. Family's important. After the call ended, I sat with those words. Family's important. He was right, of course. But importance ran both ways. Did I matter to them as much as they mattered to me? Or was I just another item on their checklist? Daughter, check. Doing fine, check. Move on. Captain Vega found me in the gym later that evening, running on the treadmill like I was trying to escape something. You okay? He asked. Fine. You've been here for 90 minutes. That's not fine. I slowed the treadmill to a walk. Just thinking. About? Family. Expectations. The usual. He stepped onto the treadmill next to mine. Want my unsolicited opinion? Do I have a choice? You're allowed to protect yourself. You don't owe anyone unlimited access to your life, even family. Especially if they don't respect what you've built. It sounds selfish when you say it like that. It sounds like boundaries. There's a difference. I thought about boundaries. About the invisible lines we draw to protect ourselves. I'd spent years letting my family cross every single one, hoping that somehow, eventually, they'd understand. But understanding required effort on both sides. What if they never get it? I asked. Then they never get it. But that doesn't change who you are or what you've accomplished. I looked at him. How did you figure all this out? I didn't. I'm still figuring it out. But I learned that chasing approval from people who don't value what you value is exhausting. Better to invest in the people who already see you. That night, I made a decision. Not a dramatic one, not something I announced or declared. Just a quiet shift in priorities. I stopped chasing their approval. I stopped trying to translate my world into theirs. I stopped hoping they'd finally understand. I focused on what mattered: my team, my mission, the people who'd earned their place in my life. And slowly, the weight I'd been carrying started to lift. Mom's 60th birthday fell on a Saturday in October. She'd been planning it for months, a dinner party at their house, close family only, nothing fancy but meaningful. She called me 6 weeks in advance. You'll be there, won't you? I know you're busy, but it would mean so much. I checked my schedule. I had leave saved up. The timing worked. I'll be there, I said. Wonderful. Ryan's bringing Madison. You'll finally get to meet her properly. The week before the party, I flew into Baltimore Washington International, drove the rental car through familiar streets, and checked into a hotel near my parents' house. I didn't stay with them anymore. Hotels gave me space, a clean exit strategy if things got uncomfortable. I'd been on duty that morning, finishing up paperwork before my flight. I didn't have time to change, so I drove straight from the airport in my service dress blue uniform. The jacket fit perfectly, the ribbons on my chest representing 7 years of service, including a commendation medal for valor I'd received 3 months earlier. That medal came from an incident most people would call heroic. I called it doing my job. A fuel leak in one of the hangars had caused a flash fire. 3 airmen were inside, disoriented by smoke. I'd been walking past when I heard the explosion. Standard procedure said wait for the fire team. But I knew those 3 airmen knew that Senior Airman Lopez had a baby daughter, that Staff Sergeant Kim was getting married in 2 months, that Airman First Class Durant was 20 years old and terrified of fire. I went in. Found them. Got them out. My commander put me in for the commendation. At the ceremony, Colonel Whitman had said, Captain Carter embodies the core values we hold sacred. Integrity first, service before self, excellence in all we do. I'd felt 10 feet tall that day. I hadn't told my family about it. What was the point? They'd congratulate me politely, then change the subject. I arrived at my parents' house at 1700 hours. The driveway was already full, Ryan's car, a few vehicles I didn't recognize. I grabbed the gift I'd brought for Mom, checked my uniform in the rearview mirror, and walked to the door. Ryan opened it. His eyes went to my uniform, and something flickered across his face. Amusement, maybe. Oh great, he said, loud enough for everyone inside to hear. The costume's back. I stepped inside. The living room was full, Mom's sister and her husband, a few family friends, Ryan's fiancée Madison. They all turned to look. Dad stood by the fireplace, drink in hand. He saw me and smiled, but it was the smile you give a child who's done something awkward. Still playing soldier, Emma? The room laughed. Polite laughter, the kind that fills uncomfortable spaces. I stood there in my uniform, ribbons on my chest, captain's bars on my shoulders, and felt smaller than I had in years. Madison stepped forward, extending her hand. I'm Madison. It's nice to finally meet you. Emma, I said, shaking her hand. Ryan's told me so much about you. Thank you for your service. It was a kind gesture. Automatic, maybe, but kind. Thank you, I said. Mom came out from the kitchen, her face lighting up. Emma, you made it. She hugged me, then stepped back. You came straight from work? I had duty this morning. Didn't have time to change. Well, you look very official. She patted my arm. Come, let's get you something to drink. Dinner was catered, nothing fancy, but nice. We sat around the extended dining table, passing dishes, making small talk. I ended up between Madison and my Aunt Carol, who asked polite questions about the Air Force that I answered in the shortest way possible. Ryan was in good form, telling stories about his firm, about clients and deals, and the fast-paced world of corporate law. Dad listened with obvious pride, jumping in with questions and observations. They had an easy rapport, a shared language of business and success. I picked at my food and tried to look engaged. After the main course, while Mom brought out the birthday cake, Ryan leaned back in his chair and looked at me. So, Emma, how long are you planning to keep this military thing going? It's my career, I said. Right, but at some point you'll want to come back to reality. Get a normal job, settle down. I am settled. You know what I mean. A real life. Kids, mortgage, the whole thing. Dad chimed in. Ryan's got a point. You're almost 30. Time to think about the future. I am thinking about the future, I said, keeping my voice level. My future looks different from yours. But it's sustainable? Dad asked. Long term, I mean. You're not planning to do this forever, are you? I set down my fork. Yes, I am. The table went quiet. Mom returned with the cake, candles blazing. Everyone sang happy birthday and the moment passed. But something had shifted inside me. After dessert, people drifted into the living room. I found myself standing alone on the back porch, looking at the yard where I used to play as a kid. The swing set was gone, replaced by a tasteful patio set. Madison joined me, carrying 2 glasses of wine. She handed me one. You don't have to drink it if you're driving, she said. But you looked like you could use it. Thanks. We stood in silence for a moment. Ryan means well, she said carefully. He just doesn't always think before he speaks. It's fine. It's not, actually. You're serving your country. That deserves respect, not mockery. I looked at her surprised. You don't have to defend me. I'm not defending you. I'm stating a fact. She sipped her wine. My brother's in the Navy. Submarine service. I know what military families deal with. Then you know it's complicated. I do. I also know that some people will never understand it, no matter how many times you explain. And that's on them, not you. I appreciated her honesty. Does Ryan know how you feel? We've discussed it. He's learning. She smiled slightly. He's got potential. Just needs some work. Inside, someone turned on music. Through the window, I could see Dad laughing at something, Ryan standing next to him with the same confident posture. They looked like a set, matching pieces. I looked down at my uniform, at the ribbons I'd earned through sweat and fear and determination. The commendation for valor sat third from the top, blue and white stripes. 3 people were alive because I'd made a choice in a split second. But here, in this house, it was just a costume. A phase I couldn't seem to outgrow. I should go, I said to Madison. Early flight tomorrow. It was a lie, but a useful one. I found Mom in the kitchen, said my goodbyes, hugged her and thanked her for including me. Dad walked me to the door. Drive safe, he said. And Emma? We really are proud of you. You know that, right? I looked at him. Really looked at him. He seemed to believe what he was saying. Maybe he did, in his own way. Maybe this was his version of pride, conditional, comfortable, limited to what he could understand. Sure, Dad. I know. I drove back to the hotel, changed out of my uniform, and lay on the bed staring at the ceiling. My phone buzzed. A text from Captain Vega. How's the family visit? I typed back, about what I expected. Need an extraction team? Despite everything, I smiled. I'll survive. You always do. See you Monday. I thought about Monday. About returning to base, to my team, to the work that made sense. To the place where I wasn't playing soldier, I was being one. The next morning, I drove to the airport in civilian clothes, returned the rental car, and flew back to my real life. I didn't call my family for a while after that. And when they called me, I kept the conversation short. It wasn't anger. It was self-preservation. The months that followed were quiet in a way I hadn't experienced before. Not the silence of loneliness, but the peace that comes from letting go of something you've been carrying too long. I stopped calling home every week. When my parents called me, I answered, but I kept the conversation surface level. Yes, work was good. No, I didn't have any big news. Yes, I'd try to make it home for Christmas. I didn't try very hard. My energy went where it mattered. My flight team was preparing for a major readiness inspection, the kind that determined funding and reputation for the next year. We worked 12-hour days, refining procedures, drilling scenarios, making sure every airman knew their role perfectly. Staff Sergeant Powell, one of my senior NCOs, caught me reviewing checklists at 2200 hours one night. Ma'am, you should get some sleep. We're ready. I just want to make sure we're ready, he said again, more firmly. You trained us well. Trust that. He was right. I'd learned that leadership wasn't about controlling every detail. It was about building a team you could trust, then trusting them. The inspection went flawlessly. The evaluators praised our efficiency, our coordination, our professionalism. Colonel Whitman pulled me aside afterward. Outstanding work, Carter. Your team performed like a machine. They're exceptional people, ma'am. They are. And they're exceptional because you made them that way. That's leadership. She paused. You're being considered for early promotion to Major. The board meets in 3 months. Keep doing what you're doing. Major. 04. Command-level responsibility, strategic thinking, the kind of role that shaped entire squadrons. I called my parents that night to share the news. It was the first time I'd called them in 6 weeks. Emma. Mom sounded surprised. How are you? Good. I have some news. I'm being considered for early promotion to Major. Oh, that's wonderful. What does that mean exactly? I'd explained this before. Multiple times. But I kept my voice patient. It means I'd be moving into a senior leadership role. It's unusual to make Major this early. It's competitive. Well, you always were ambitious. Let me get your father. Dad came on the line. Emma. Your mother says congratulations. I'm being considered for promotion. Not promoted yet. Right. Well, fingers crossed. Listen, we're having some people over tonight, but I wanted to tell you Ryan and Madison set a date for the wedding. June 15th. Save the date. I'll try. You'll try? Emma, it's your brother's wedding. I don't control my deployment schedule, Dad. Can't you just request leave? It doesn't work that way. Well, figure it out. Family comes first. I bit back the response I wanted to give. I'll do my best. After we hung up, I sat with that phrase. Family comes first. Easy to say when your family made you feel valued. Harder when every conversation reminded you that your choices, your sacrifices, your entire career was just an inconvenient phase. Captain Vega found me in the chow hall the next morning. You look like you've been thinking too much again, he said, sitting across from me with his breakfast tray. Ryan's getting married in June. And I'm supposed to just make it happen, regardless of mission requirements. Are you going? I don't know yet. Depends on where I am, what's happening. But do you want to go? That was the real question, wasn't it? Part of me does, I admitted. He's my brother. It's his wedding. But another part of me just feels tired. Tired of being the one who always adjusts, always accommodates, always tries harder. Then don't. Don't go to my brother's wedding. Don't be the one who always adjusts. If it works with your schedule, great. If it doesn't, send a nice gift and move on. You're allowed to prioritize your life. That sounds harsh. It sounds like boundaries. There's a difference. He took a bite of his scrambled eggs. Look, I get it. Family's complicated. But you've spent years trying to earn respect from people who don't value what you do. At some point, you have to ask yourself if that's a good investment. I thought about that conversation for days. Investment. That's what relationships were, really. You invested time, energy, emotional labor. And sometimes the return was worth it. Sometimes it wasn't. 3 months later, I made major. The promotion board results came out on a Tuesday morning and Colonel Whitman called me into her office before I'd even seen the official list. Congratulations, Major Carter. The title sounded surreal. Major. At 31 years old, I'd made 04. Above-zone promotion was rare, reserved for officers who demonstrated exceptional performance and potential. Thank you, ma'am. You've earned it. The board recognized what I've known for years: you're going places in this Air Force. Your next assignment will likely be a staff position at command level. That'll position you well for Lieutenant Colonel. Lieutenant Colonel. Oh, 5. The trajectory was real now, not just theoretical. I called my parents that evening. I made major, I said when Dad answered. That's great, Emma. Really great. Hold on, let me get your mother. The phone clattered. I heard muffled voices, then Mom came on. Emma, your father says you got promoted again. Major. I made major. Oh, sweetheart, that's wonderful. You must be so pleased. I am. Your father wants to know if this means more money. Something inside me deflated. That's not really the point, Mom. Of course not, but it's practical to ask. You know how your father is about finances. Dad's voice came back on. So how much of a raise are we talking? It's not about the raise, Dad. It's about the responsibility, the trust, sure. But you must be making decent money by now. What is it, 70,000? 80? It's more complicated than that. Base pay plus allowances plus, ballpark it for me. I closed my eyes. Around 90,000. Not bad. Though Ryan's pulling in twice that at his firm. But different fields, different scales. There it was. The comparison. Always the comparison. I should go, I said. Lots of work to do. Of course. Congratulations again, sweetheart. We're very proud. I hung up and sat in my empty quarters, looking at the promotion certificate that would arrive in a few weeks. Major Emma Carter. 7 years of service, countless hours of training, lives saved, missions accomplished, teams led. And my father wanted to know how I compared to Ryan's salary. I didn't call them again for a long time after that. Ryan's wedding invitation arrived in my mailbox 6 weeks later. Formal cardstock, elegant font, June 15th at a country club in Maryland. I checked my assignment schedule. I'd be stateside, no deployments planned. I could go if I wanted to. I RSVP'd that I'd attend alone. The weeks leading up to the wedding were busy. My new assignment as executive officer to the wing commander meant longer hours, higher stakes, more visibility. I briefed generals, coordinated with other branches, made decisions that affected thousands of personnel. But in the back of my mind, I kept thinking about that wedding. About standing in a room full of people who thought my career was a phase, watching my brother marry someone who actually seemed to understand what service meant. 3 days before the wedding, Colonel Whitman called me into her office. Carter, I need you to attend a ceremony next week. One of our pilots is being honored at the National Aviation Museum. Wall of Heroes dedication. I want command representation there. Yes, ma'am. When? Thursday afternoon. Should only take a few hours. Thursday. The day before the wedding. I'll be there, ma'am. I didn't tell my parents about the ceremony. It was work, classified as temporary duty, not worth mentioning. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. The morning of the ceremony, my mother called. Emma, we're so excited for tomorrow. Are you already in town? I fly in tonight. Perfect. Actually, your father had an idea. There's a special exhibit at the National Aviation Museum, all about military aviation. We thought we'd go tomorrow morning, make a day of it before the wedding. You should come with us. My stomach tightened. The museum? Yes. It'll be fun. Family outing before the big event. Ryan and Madison are coming too. What time? We're thinking around 10? The wedding isn't until 4, so we have plenty of time. The ceremony was at 1400 hours. They'd be long gone by then. Sure, I said. I'll meet you there. Wonderful. See you tomorrow, sweetheart. I hung up and stared at my phone, a strange feeling settling over me. They were going to the museum. The same museum where I'd be honored. On the same day. What were the odds? I flew into Baltimore the night before the wedding and checked into the same hotel I'd used for Mom's birthday. The room was generic and clean, a neutral space that belonged to no one. I hung up my service dress blues for the museum ceremony, laid out my civilian clothes for the wedding, and tried to sleep. I kept thinking about the next day. About the Wall of Heroes ceremony. About my family wandering through that same museum, completely unaware. Should I tell them? Give them a heads up? But something stopped me. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe I just wanted one thing in my life that was mine before they found a way to diminish it. I decided to stay quiet. The morning of, I dressed carefully. The museum ceremony was at 1400 hours, but my family planned to arrive at 10. I'd join them for their visit, walk through the exhibits, let them make their jokes. Then I'd excuse myself, change into my dress blues, and attend the ceremony as a guest. They'd never know. I met them in the museum lobby at 09:55. Dad wore khakis and a polo shirt, Mom a floral dress. Ryan and Madison looked casual but put together. Everyone seemed relaxed, in a good mood. Emma. Mom hugged me. You look nice. Very put together. Thanks. Dad extended his hand for a formal handshake, which felt oddly ceremonial. Ready for the tour? Ready. We moved through the entrance and into the main hall, where aircraft hung from the ceiling in frozen flight. A massive B-17 bomber dominated the center, surrounded by smaller fighters and trainers. The space felt sacred, like a cathedral built to honor courage. Ryan immediately pulled out his phone, taking selfies with Madison in front of various planes. Dad read the plaques aloud, commenting on engineering achievements and historical significance. Mom admired the aesthetic, the polished metal, the vintage aesthetic. I walked quietly beside them, listening to their commentary. Can you imagine flying in one of these? Dad said, looking up at a World War II fighter. No computers, no GPS. Just skill and courage. It's impressive, I said. Makes you appreciate what those pilots went through. Real heroes. I nodded, biting back the observation that pilots still flew without computers when systems failed, still relied on skill and courage every single day. But this wasn't the moment for that conversation. We moved through the exhibits. Vietnam-era helicopters, Cold War reconnaissance planes, modern fighter jets. Ryan made jokes about Top Gun. Madison asked thoughtful questions about the aircraft specifications. Mom took photos of everything. And then we turned a corner into a newer section of the museum. The Wall of Heroes. It was a curved wall of polished black granite, lit from above with focused spotlights. Photographs of service members line the wall, each with a small plaque describing their act of courage. The display was solemn, reverent. Dad walked toward it, curious. What's this? A placard at the entrance explained. The Wall of Heroes honors Air Force personnel who have demonstrated extraordinary courage and valor in the line of duty. Mom stopped beside him. Oh, how moving. They began to walk along the wall, reading the citations. Each photograph showed a person in uniform, men and women of various ranks and ages, frozen in formal military portraits. Ryan and Madison followed, moving slowly, taking in each story. I hung back, my heart starting to pound. My photograph was near the center of the wall. I'd seen the proof image weeks ago when they'd asked permission to use it. Captain Emma Carter, taken during my promotion ceremony last year. I was in dress blues, standing at attention, expression serious and professional. The citation read, for exceptional courage and decisive action during a critical emergency, saving the lives of 3 airmen during a hangar fire at Ramstein Air Base, Germany. Captain Carter's selfless service and quick thinking exemplify the highest standards of Air Force core values. I watched my family move along the wall, getting closer to my photograph. My stomach tightened. Part of me wanted to warn them, to prepare them. But another part, the part that had been ignored and dismissed for years, wanted to see their faces when they realized. Dad reached my photograph first. He stopped walking. Completely still, like someone had pressed pause on him. That's... He started, then stopped. Mom stepped beside him, following his gaze. Her hand went to her mouth. Ryan came closer, squinting at the photograph. That's Emma, Dad said quietly. His voice sounded strange, hollow. They all stared at my photograph. At my name. At the citation describing what I'd done. The silence stretched out, thick and suffocating. Finally, Dad turned around, scanning the area. He found me standing a few feet back, watching them. That's you, he said. That's you on this wall? Yes, I said simply. When did this happen? The fire was 8 months ago. The ceremony for the wall was scheduled for today. Mom's eyes were wet. You saved 3 people? I did my job. You went into a burning building, Dad said slowly, like he was trying to make the words make sense. You could have died. That was a possibility, yes? Ryan looked between the photograph and me, his expression unreadable. Madison stood slightly behind him, her hand on his shoulder. Why didn't you tell us? Mom asked. That was the question, wasn't it? Would it have mattered? I asked quietly. Dad flinched like I'd slapped him. Of course it would have mattered. Would it? Because every time I've tried to share what I do, what it means, you've made jokes. Called it a phase. Compared me to Ryan. Made it clear that my career isn't something you respect. That's not fair, Dad said. Isn't it? Dad, you asked me how much money I make as a major. Not what it means to lead people, not what responsibilities I carry. You wanted to know how I compare to Ryan's salary. His face went red. I was just curious. You were just dismissive. You've been dismissive for 9 years. Mom stepped forward. Emma, we didn't realize that's the problem. You never realized. Because you never tried to understand. People were starting to notice us, museum visitors slowing down, sensing drama. I lowered my voice. I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm just telling you the truth. For 9 years, I've tried to make you see what this career means to me. And for 9 years, you've treated it like something I'll outgrow. Like I'm playing dress up instead of serving my country. Dad looked back at the photograph, at the citation. We didn't know about this. About what you did. I didn't tell you because I knew you wouldn't understand. And I was tired of being disappointed. Ryan spoke for the first time, his voice quiet. You saved 3 people's lives. I did what any officer would do. What I was trained to do. That's not what any officer would do, Madison said softly. That's what a hero does. I shook my head. I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who did her job. Emma, Mom said, tears running down her face now. I'm so sorry. We should have listened. We should have understood. Yes, I said simply. You should have. Dad stood frozen, staring at my photograph on the wall. When he finally spoke, his voice cracked. I called it a costume. You did. At your mother's birthday. You were wearing your uniform, and I made a joke about you playing soldier. I remember. He turned to face me fully. You could have died 6 weeks before that. You went into a burning building and saved 3 people, and I didn't even know. None of us knew. No, I said. None of you knew. The weight of that hung in the air between us. Finally, Dad said, the ceremony. You said there's a ceremony today. 1400 hours. 2 p.m. Can we come? I looked at him, at Mom, at Ryan and Madison. They all looked shaken, like the ground had shifted beneath them. It's not a private ceremony, I said. It's open to the public. But will you be there? I'm being honored. So yes, I'll be there. Mom wiped her eyes. We'd like to come. If that's okay. Part of me wanted to say no. Wanted to keep this moment separate from them, untainted by years of disappointment. But another part of me, the part that still remembered being a little girl who wanted her father's approval, couldn't quite close that door. It starts at 1400 hours, I said. Sharp. I left them standing at the Wall of Heroes and found a quiet bathroom in another wing of the museum. My hands were shaking. 9 years of frustration, of swallowed disappointment, had just come pouring out in front of my entire family. I splashed cold water on my face and looked at myself in the mirror. Still me. Still Major Emma Carter, regardless of what they thought or understood. My phone buzzed. A text from Captain Vega. Ready for the ceremony? I typed back, as ready as I'll ever be. You earned this. Don't forget that. I changed into my service dress blues in the family restroom, carefully arranging my ribbons, making sure every detail was perfect. The uniform transformed me, the way it always did. In civilian clothes, I was just Emma, trying to navigate complicated family dynamics. In uniform, I was Major Carter, an officer with a clear purpose and defined role. The ceremony was being held in the museum's main atrium, where rows of chairs faced a temporary stage. I arrived at 13:30 hours, early enough to check in with the event coordinator. Colonel Whitman found me immediately. Carter. Good, you're here. How are you feeling? Fine, ma'am. She studied my face. You look like you've been crying. Rough morning. Want to talk about it? Not really, ma'am. She nodded. Fair enough. Listen, there's going to be some press here. Local news, Air Force media. Standard stuff. You'll give a brief statement after the dedication, nothing major. Just acknowledge the honor and thank your team. Understood. And Emma? She lowered her voice. Whatever happened this morning, don't let it diminish this moment. You earned this honor through courage and competence. Own it. Yes, ma'am. I took my seat in the front row, reserved for the honorees. There were 5 of us being added to the Wall of Heroes today, 3 officers and 2 senior enlisted. I recognized one of them, Captain James Monroe, who'd led a successful evacuation during a natural disaster in the Philippines. The room began to fill. Museum visitors, Air Force personnel, families. I didn't turn around to look for my family. If they came, they came. If they didn't, that was fine too. At 13:55 hours, the ceremony began. A brigadier general I'd never met took the podium. He spoke about courage, about the Air Force core values, about the men and women who embodied service before self. His words were formal but sincere. Then, one by one, they called us up. Captain Monroe went first. They unveiled his photograph on the wall, read his citation, presented him with a commemorative plaque. His parents stood in the audience, beaming with pride. Then it was my turn. Captain Emma Carter, the general said, and I stood, walking to the stage with measured steps. They unveiled my photograph, the same one my family had just discovered. The general read my citation aloud, his voice carrying through the atrium. Captain Carter demonstrated extraordinary courage and selfless service during a critical emergency at Ramstein Air Base, Germany. When a fuel leak ignited a flash fire in Hangar 7, Captain Carter entered the structure without regard for her personal safety. Despite thick smoke and extreme temperatures, she located and evacuated 3 trapped airmen, ensuring their safe extraction before the building's integrity was compromised. Her decisive leadership and unwavering commitment to her fellow airmen exemplify the highest traditions of military service. The audience applauded. I stood at attention, keeping my expression neutral even though my heart was racing. The general handed me the plaque, shook my hand, and stepped back. According to the program, I was supposed to say a few words now. I stepped to the microphone and looked out at the audience. In the 3rd row, I saw them Mom, Dad, Ryan, and Madison. They were all watching me with expressions I'd never seen before. Attention. Respect. Understanding. Thank you, I began. Receiving this honor is humbling. On the day of that fire, I didn't think about courage or valor. I thought about Staff Sergeant Kim, who was getting married 2 months later. I thought about Senior Airman Lopez, who had a 6-month-old daughter at home. I thought about Airman First Class Durant, who was barely 20 years old. Those 3 people are alive today not because I'm a hero, but because I'm an Air Force officer. And being an Air Force officer means you don't leave your people behind. I paused, feeling the weight of the moment. This plaque has my name on it, but it represents everyone who's ever made the choice to serve. Every person who's put on the uniform knowing that someday they might be asked to do something difficult, something dangerous, something that requires them to put someone else's life ahead of their own. That's not heroism. That's duty. And I'm honored to serve alongside men and women who understand that difference. More applause. I returned to my seat, my hands gripping the plaque tightly. The rest of the ceremony passed in a blur. More honorees, more citations, more applause. When it finally ended, people stood and mingled. Air Force personnel came up to congratulate me. Strangers thanked me for my service. Museum staff took photographs. And then my family approached. Mom reached me first. She didn't say anything, just pulled me into a tight hug. When she stepped back, her eyes were red again. Dad extended his hand, then seemed to think better of it and hugged me instead. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry." Ryan stood awkwardly a few feet back. Finally, he said, "That was a good speech. Thanks. I didn't know about any of it. About what you actually do, what it means. I tried to tell you. I know. I didn't listen." He looked genuinely uncomfortable, which was unusual for my always confident brother. "I'm an idiot. You're my brother. Both things can be true." He attempted a smile. "I'm proud of you. I should have said that years ago." Madison stepped forward. "Your speech was powerful. Thank you for sharing it." Colonel Whitman appeared at my elbow. "Carter, I need to steal you for a moment. Press wants a photo." "Yes, ma'am." I turned to my family. "I'll be right back." The next hour was a whirlwind of interviews, photographs, handshakes. The local news wanted a statement. Air Force media needed footage. Museum staff wanted shots of me standing in front of my photograph on the wall. Through it all, I kept catching glimpses of my family. They didn't leave. They waited, watching from a distance. Not intruding, but not abandoning either. Finally, around 1600 hours, the crowd thinned. Colonel Whitman released me with another congratulations and a reminder about my assignment briefing on Monday. I gathered my things and found my family sitting in chairs near the exit. Dad stood when he saw me. "We should probably head to the venue. Wedding starts in 2 hours." Right. The wedding. In all the chaos, I'd almost forgotten. "You're still planning to come?" Mom asked carefully. I looked at them, really looked at them. They seemed smaller somehow, less certain than usual. "I'm already here," I said. "Might as well." We walked to our cars together. Dad caught up to me before I reached my rental. "Emma, wait." I stopped. "What you said in there? About us not understanding, not trying to understand." "You're right. We didn't. I didn't." He struggled with the words. "I thought I was protecting you in some weird way. Military life seemed hard, dangerous. I thought if I dismissed it, maybe you'd choose something safer. That wasn't your choice to make, Dad. I know that now. But for what it's worth, I'm proud of you. I should have said it sooner. I should have said it every time you called, every time you visited, every time you tried to share your life with us. It wasn't a perfect apology. But it was honest, which counted for something." "Thank you," I said. "I can't promise I'll understand everything about your career. But I can promise to listen. To really listen. That's all I've ever wanted." He nodded. "See you at the venue?" "See you there." I drove to the country club alone, thinking about the day. About standing in front of that wall, seeing my photograph among heroes. About my family finally seeing me the way I'd always wanted them to. It felt like something had shifted. Not fixed, maybe. Not perfect. But shifted. And for now, that was enough. The wedding venue was exactly what I expected: elegant country club, manicured grounds, string lights hanging between trees like captured stars. I arrived with 30 minutes to spare, found my assigned seat, and tried to blend into the background. I was still in uniform. I hadn't had time to change, and honestly, I wasn't sure I wanted to. Let them see me in it. Let them remember. The ceremony was beautiful. Ryan looked genuinely happy standing at the altar, watching Madison walk down the aisle. For all his flaws, my brother knew a good thing when he found it. Madison was kind, thoughtful, and apparently immune to his more irritating qualities. I sat between distant cousins I barely recognized, watching my little brother get married. When the officiant asked who gives this woman, Madison's father spoke clearly. When they exchanged vows, Madison's voice was steady and strong. Ryan's voice cracked slightly, which made the moment more real somehow. They kissed, everyone applauded, and just like that, my brother was married. The reception was held in the club's ballroom, all white linens and flower arrangements. I found my name card at a table near the back, safely away from the family table. I didn't mind. The distance felt appropriate. But before I could sit, Mom appeared at my elbow. Emma, there's been a seating change. You're at our table. Mom, it's fine. I'm good here. You're not sitting in the back at your brother's wedding. Come on. She led me to the family table, where Dad and Ryan's new in-laws were already seated. Someone had added a chair between Mom and Dad's places, squeezing me in. Dad stood when I approached. Emma, glad you're here. Wouldn't miss it, I said, sitting down. Dinner passed in stilted conversation and polite questions from Madison's parents about military life. They seemed genuinely interested, asking thoughtful questions about deployment schedules and what it meant to command a flight team. It was refreshing, actually. Ryan and Madison made their rounds, stopping at each table. When they reached ours, Ryan pulled me aside. Can we talk? Just for a minute. Sure. We walked to the edge of the ballroom, near the French doors that opened onto the terrace. I owe you an apology, Ryan said. A real one. Not just the half-hearted thing I said at the museum. Okay. I've been a jerk. For years. Making jokes about your career, treating it like it didn't matter. I think part of me was jealous, honestly. That surprised me. Jealous. You knew what you wanted. You went after it. You built something real. Meanwhile, I've been floating through life, taking the easy path because I could. He rubbed the back of his neck. The thing is, everyone always told me I had so much potential. But you're the one who actually did something with yours. Ryan, let me finish. When I saw that wall today, saw your photograph, read what you did, it hit me. My sister's a hero, and I've been treating her like she's playing dress-up. That's unforgivable. It's not unforgivable. It's just something we need to work past. Can we? Work past it. I looked at my brother, really looked at him. He seemed younger suddenly, less sure of himself. Getting married did that sometimes, made you take stock of who you were and who you wanted to be. We can try, I said. He nodded, relief visible on his face. That's all I'm asking for. A chance to be a better brother. Madison appeared, slipping her hand into Ryan's. Sorry to interrupt. They're about to cut the cake. We should get back, Ryan said. Then, more softly, thanks, Emma. For coming. For giving me another chance. You're my brother. That's what we do. They walked back inside, and I followed a moment later. The cake cutting was cheerful chaos, with Ryan making a mess of feeding Madison her slice. Everyone laughed, cameras flashed, and the DJ queued up the first dance. I watched from the edge of the dance floor as Ryan and Madison swayed to some romantic ballad. They looked happy together, genuinely happy. Whatever doubts I'd had about my brother's commitment evaporated, watching him hold his wife like she was the most precious thing in the world. Dad appeared beside me. They look good together. They do. Your mother and I looked like that once. Young and stupid and so sure we'd figured everything out. You did fine. We did okay. We also made mistakes. He turned to face me. I've been thinking about what you said. About us dismissing your career, treating it like a phase. You were right. Dad, we don't have to do this now. Yes, we do. Because I need you to hear this. He took a breath. I grew up believing that success looked a certain way. Corporate job, steady income, comfortable life. Anything outside that framework seemed risky, uncertain. When you joined the Air Force, I couldn't see past my own narrow definition of achievement. I understand. Do you? Because I'm not sure I understood until today. When I saw your photograph on that wall, read what you did, heard you speak, it finally clicked. You didn't choose an easier path. You chose a harder one, a more meaningful one. And instead of supporting that choice, I belittled it. His voice cracked slightly on the last word. I can't take back the jokes I made, the dismissals, the years of not understanding. But I can do better going forward. If you'll let me. I looked at my father, seeing him clearly for maybe the first time. Not the corporate manager who always had the answer, but a man who'd realized he'd been wrong. I'd like that, I said quietly. Tell me about the fire. About what actually happened that day. So I did. Standing on the edge of my brother's wedding reception, I told my father about the day I ran into a burning building. About hearing the explosion, seeing the smoke, knowing that 3 of my airmen were trapped inside. About the decision that took less than 5 seconds, training overriding fear, duty overriding self-preservation. I told him about finding Staff Sergeant Kim first, disoriented and coughing near the back exit. About locating Senior Airman Lopez under a collapsed workbench, conscious but trapped. About searching through smoke so thick I couldn't see my own hands until I heard Airman Durant calling for help. I told him about getting them out, one by one, seconds before the building's structural supports failed. And I told him about the aftermath, the commendation ceremony, the recommendation for the Wall of Heroes, the knowledge that I'd done exactly what I was trained to do. Dad listened without interrupting. When I finished, his eyes were wet. You could have died. That was a possibility. And you went in anyway. They were my people. That's what you do for your people. He pulled me into a hug, sudden and fierce. I'm so proud of you. And I'm sorry it took me this long to say it properly. We stood like that for a moment, my father holding me like I was still his little girl, while my brother's wedding swirled around us. When he pulled back, he said, "Will you dance with your old man?" I'm not much of a dancer. Neither am I. We'll figure it out together. We moved onto the dance floor as the DJ played something slow and forgettable. Dad wasn't kidding, he wasn't a good dancer. But neither was I. We shuffled awkwardly, finding a rhythm that worked. Your mother wants to visit you, he said. At your base, wherever you're stationed next. See your life, meet your people. She doesn't have to do that. She wants to. We both do. If you're open to it. I thought about my parents visiting my base, meeting my team, seeing the world I'd built away from them. It felt vulnerable, exposing them to something I'd kept separate for so long. But maybe that was the point. Maybe rebuilding trust meant letting them into the parts of my life I'd been protecting. I'd be open to that, I said. The song ended. We stepped apart, and Dad squeezed my shoulder once before heading back to the table. I stayed on the dance floor as the next song started, watching couples spin and sway. Ryan caught my eye across the room and raised his champagne glass in a silent toast. I nodded back. Later, after the bouquet toss and the last dance and all the traditional wedding moments, I found myself on the terrace with Madison. She'd kicked off her heels and was standing barefoot on the stone, looking up at the stars. Hell of a day, she said. You can say that again. Finding out your new sister-in-law is a legitimate hero kind of changes the dynamic. I'm not a hero. You keep saying that. But everyone who knows what you did disagrees. She glanced at me. Ryan told me what happened at the museum. How you all found out about the wall together. It wasn't planned. Best things rarely are. She smiled. For what it's worth, I think Ryan finally gets it. What you do, why it matters. He's been talking about it all evening. He apologized. Good. He should have done it years ago. We stood in comfortable silence, watching the party wind down inside. I hope you'll come around more, Madison said. Now that things are better with your family. I'll try. That's all anyone can ask. 3 weeks after the wedding, a package arrived at my new assignment. I'd been moved to a staff position at Air Force Material Command, exactly as Colonel Whitman had predicted. The work was challenging, more strategic planning, less direct leadership, but I was adjusting. The package was from my father. Inside was a framed photograph, professionally matted. It was a picture he'd taken at the museum, me standing in front of my photograph on the Wall of Heroes, in full dress blues, looking more confident than I'd felt in that moment. A note was tucked inside, written in Dad's careful handwriting, in case you ever doubt how far you've come. We're proud of you. Dad, I set it on my desk, next to the photo of my flight team from Ramstein. Mom called that evening. Did you get your father's package? I did. It's perfect. He's been different since the wedding. More thoughtful. He asked me the other day what it means to be a major, what your responsibilities are. Actually wanted to understand. That's progress. It is. We'd still like to visit if the invitation's open. See where you work, meet the people you serve with. I looked around my small base housing unit, functional, efficient, impersonal. The idea of my parents visiting still felt strange, but less frightening than before. Let me check my schedule. Maybe in a few months, once I'm more settled here. Whenever works for you, sweetheart. We'll make it happen. After we hung up, I sat at my desk and opened my laptop. Work emails needed responses, reports needed reviewing. But I found myself instead looking at the photograph Dad had sent. I looked strong in that picture. Certain. Like someone who'd figured out who she was and refused to apologize for it. Maybe I had. The next 6 months passed quickly. Work consumed most of my time. Strategic planning for equipment modernization, coordination with contractors, endless meetings about budgets and timelines. It was different from leading a flight team, but important in its own way. I made Lieutenant Colonel at 33, ahead of schedule again. The promotion board results came out on a Tuesday, and this time I called my parents immediately. Mom answered. Emma, we were just talking about you. I made Lieutenant Colonel. She screamed, actually screamed with excitement. Anthony, pick up the phone. Emma made Lieutenant Colonel. Dad's voice came through, slightly breathless. Emma? Is it true? It's true. The results posted this morning. Lieutenant Colonel Carter. He said it slowly, testing how it sounded. My daughter, the Lieutenant Colonel. It's a big deal, Dad. Oh, 5. It means I'll be taking on more strategic responsibilities, probably a squadron command position. Explain it to me. All of it. I want to understand. So I explained the rank structure, the competitive promotion process, what Lieutenant Colonel meant in terms of responsibility and leadership. And Dad listened, really listened, asking questions, taking notes. When's the promotion ceremony? He asked. In 3 months. March 15th. We'll be there. Your mother, Ryan, Madison, all of us. If you want us there. I thought about my last promotion ceremony, attended only by my Air Force colleagues. About every achievement I'd celebrated alone because my family hadn't understood why they mattered. I'd like that, I said. Then it's settled. Send us the details. I stood in front of a small gathering at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base on a cold March morning. Colonel Whitman, now Brigadier General Whitman, officiated my promotion ceremony. My parents, Ryan, and Madison sat in the front row, watching as my Major's oak leaves were replaced with the silver oak leaves of a lieutenant colonel. General Whitman administered the oath. I repeated the familiar words, feeling their weight more deeply each time. I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I will obey the orders of the President of the United States and the orders of the officers appointed over me, according to regulations and the Uniform Code of Military Justice. So help me God. The audience applauded. My parents stood, pride visible on their faces. Ryan recorded everything on his phone while Madison wiped her eyes. At lunch afterward, Dad couldn't stop looking at my new rank. Lieutenant Colonel, he kept saying. My daughter, the Lieutenant Colonel. You're going to wear that phrase out, Ryan said, grinning. Madison asked about what came next. I explained squadron command, leading about 200 personnel. Maybe Colonel in another 4 or 5 years if things went well. And after Colonel? Dad asked. If I'm very lucky? Maybe General someday. But that's decades away and highly competitive. You'll make it, Dad said with absolute certainty. Look at everything you've already accomplished. It was strange, hearing that confidence from him. For years, I'd wanted exactly this, his belief in me, his pride, his understanding. Before they left, Mom pulled me aside. We're sorry it took us so long to see you. The real you. Mom, no, let me say this. You've been extraordinary from the beginning. We were just too blind to notice. But we see you now, sweetheart. We see you, and we're so proud. Ryan approached after. You're kind of my hero. Like, actually. Madison and I talk about you all the time. About how you knew what you wanted and went after it, no matter what anyone else thought. Ryan, you don't need to, I mean it. You inspire me to be better. Less comfortable, more purposeful. He grinned. Thank you for not giving up on us. On me. I didn't deserve another chance, but you gave me one anyway. You're my brother. That's what family does. Back at base, I sat at my desk looking at the photo Dad had given me standing in front of the wall of heroes. Beside it now sat a new photo from today's ceremony, showing me with my family. We were all genuinely smiling. No forced happiness, no underlying tension. Just a family that had finally figured out how to see each other clearly. I thought about the years I'd spent chasing their approval, the pain of feeling invisible. And I thought about this moment, them in the front row, Dad's voice breaking with pride, Mom's tears, Ryan recording everything. It had taken time. It had taken pain. It had taken me standing in front of that wall, forcing them to confront who I really was. But we'd gotten here. Finally. Years passed in cycles of deployment and return, promotions and new assignments. I made colonel at 37 after commanding a logistics squadron for 3 years. My parents attended that ceremony too, along with Ryan, Madison, and their 2-year-old daughter Claire. Aunt Emma's a colonel now, Madison explained to Claire, who was more interested in the shiny buttons on my uniform. Big deal? Claire asked. Very big deal, Ryan said. Your Aunt Emma is basically amazing. We walked across the tarmac, and I showed Claire AC 17 Globemaster 3. The loadmaster let her sit in the cockpit for a photo. She waved from the pilot's seat, delighted by all the buttons. Later, we gathered at my house for dinner. Claire toddled from picture to picture on my walls. Aunt Emma. Aunt Emma. Dad stood in front of my wall of heroes photo. I still can't believe we almost missed this. Almost missed understanding what you'd built. But you didn't miss it, I said. That's what matters. Mom asked how much longer I'd serve. At least another 10 years, maybe more. If I'm lucky, I might make general. General Carter, Ryan mused. Now that would be something. But the truth was, I'd already thought about it. Making flag rank was the pinnacle of an Air Force career. And I wanted it, not for validation, but because I knew I could lead at that level. I was 42 when the email arrived. I'd been selected for promotion to Brigadier General. Oh, 7. 1 star. A general. My hands were shaking as I called my parents. I made general. Silence. Then, say that again. I made Brigadier General. The results just posted. I heard Dad shouting to Mom, heard her shriek. When he came back on the line, his voice was thick with emotion. My daughter, the general. The promotion ceremony was held in August at the Pentagon. Bigger, more formal, with 3-star generals in attendance. My parents sat in the front row again, along with Ryan, Madison, and Claire, who was now 4. The Chief of Staff of the Air Force administered the oath. They removed my colonel's eagle and replaced it with a single silver star. My first star. The star I'd dreamed about for 20 years. The audience applauded. In the front row, my family cried openly. Dad was recording on his phone. Mom gripped his arm, her face radiant. Ryan had Claire on his shoulders so she could see better. After the ceremony, Claire touched my star with one curious finger. Pretty. It is pretty, I agreed. Took me a long time to earn it. Dad pulled me aside during the reception. The day you enlisted, I thought you were making the biggest mistake of your life. I thought you'd come home defeated. His voice cracked. Instead, you became this. A general. Someone people look up to, someone who's made a real difference. I was wrong about everything. And I'm so grateful you didn't listen to me. I hugged my father, this man who'd taken years to understand me but had finally gotten there. Me too, Dad. That evening, I stood alone in my hotel room, looking at my new uniform. 1 star on each shoulder. Brigadier General Emma Carter. I thought about the 22-year-old who'd walked into a recruiting office, looking for purpose. About the years of struggle of feeling invisible. I thought about the wall at the National Aviation Museum, my photograph among heroes. About my family discovering it, about the moment everything changed. My phone buzzed. A text from Ryan. Claire wants to know if generals have superpowers. I smiled and typed back. Tell her we have the power to lead good people and make hard decisions. That's better than superpowers. She says that's cool. She wants to be a general when she grows up. Tell her I'll save her a star. I looked at myself in the mirror. Dress blues, single star, a career's worth of ribbons on my chest. I'd made it. And this time, when I celebrated my achievement, my family was celebrating with me. Finally. Thanks for watching. If this hit home, tap like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs a boundary win. Drop your take below. I read every comment. Questions for you. Have you ever been mocked for a career or phase that turned out to be your calling? What moment finally earned you respect, and from whom? How do you balance seeking respect with not needing approval? If you were in my shoes at the museum, what would you have said or not said? Do you believe relationships can rebuild after years of dismissal? Why or why not?